Hi, my name is Magda Latigan. I'm the Vice President for Human Resources for Australia, New Zealand and South Africa for the Estee Lauder companies. In Australia, we have more than 18 brands and we have 2,000 employees. Of those 2,000 employees, 75% of them are our first-line employees. Very, very exciting for us to be talking to you today about what these first-line workers do. We want to surprise and delight our consumer. And these first-line workers are the employees that actually see the consumer every day. But we also want to surprise and delight our employees. So how do we empower them in this fast-moving, competitive world to be part of the digital transformation and the digital world? Joining me today from Microsoft Australia is the HR Director, Ingrid Jenkins. And Ingrid, I'm fascinated to hear what you think about the first-line workers. What is Microsoft's vision and how do you define a first-line worker?
It's a great question, and firstly it's an appreciation for just how big the first-line worker population is. It's estimated to be 2 billion worldwide, which is just amazing. And then to think about how is this first-line community connected into the broader organisation. And I think there is a general acceptance that perhaps organisations haven't done enough to connect with their first-line workers, both in just the community itself, but also how do they leverage the learnings that these first-line workers have. They're very much the front line in terms of direction with customers, how products are being used, and I'm not sure organisations have really leveraged those learnings back into some of the decision makers.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think what the issue is that we forget that these first-line workers are normally quite digitally transformed anyway.
Yes.
So what tools do you have in Microsoft that makes them really want to adopt them?
From our perspective, it's looking around various ways in which we can connect. So the reality is first-line workers often geographically dispersed. Most organisations nowadays have workforces that are both, if not globally dispersed, certainly locally dispersed, particularly with first-line workers. I think also the practicalities of bringing people physically together nowadays are less and less, both in terms of people themselves not wanting to travel, but also the financial restraints attached to that. So then we look at technology as a real enabler around the connections and how that helps people. So from the Microsoft suite, we have a few different options. Yammer is really about how do we build communities and give people the opportunities to connect with people they wouldn't otherwise ever have the opportunity to connect with, both in terms of top-down messaging, but very much about peer group connections as well, and building communities and sharing learnings and learning from each other.
I think that's so important. I think just my own personal experience with Yammer is that top-down, everybody feels part of it. It's kind of their own internal social media page.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated into how you would roll it out.
So there's a few things. One, I think, is just people seeing the value of Yammer. What's in it for me? Why would I do this? And I think if we think about the first-line community particularly, and if we think about people's general sense of wanting to connect and belong, Yammer is just such a great tool that enables that. So thinking about who are we trying to influence to adopt Yammer, what's in it for them, why would they do it, and then it's finding those early adopters, those people that are really using Yammer well, really seeing the benefits for themselves and talking to their peer groups around why they do it and the benefit they get from it. Whilst email's still really important and a mechanism for communication, but it doesn't necessarily generate the same level of activity or community in generating ideas. And so whoever posts on Yammer, it doesn't have to be from the CEO. It can be from anyone.
Anybody, yeah.
And then whoever participates in that conversation, again, can come from anyone. And we also have teams, and that's really taking the collaboration space and looking more about teams and how you come together, and where you don't have that physical connection, again, like first-line workers, but might be more discreet than Yammer, to say we want to work together as a team. It might be around a particular project, it might be a way in which just regular dialogue amongst that team about what's going on within that team. And that's also another great way in which people can collaborate.
I agree with you, Ingrid, and I think we underestimate, though, the use of SharePoint with our first line workers, and I can think of how we as a company could use SharePoint more beneficially for that group of people. If you think of that, each brand will have many different facets every day that they have to deal with. It comes up on the surface, and if they want to search something, if there was a SharePoint, at least they could go to the one source of truth, the authentic document, rather than where do I find this document, in whose file is it? So we believe that SharePoint is going to be one of our game changers as well, because everything will go on there and we will have no paper going to the store at all.
And I think back to your earlier point about adoption, I think, and what's in it for people, it's really just understanding people want simplicity, ease of access, to navigate, to get the information they need to do their job. And SharePoint is, a supporting mechanism to do that.
Well, imagine if you're a customer at the counter and you ask the beauty advisor a question, or the artist. We often want them to be the experts, but sometimes they may not know. And at least they can say, well, let's look together and go onto the SharePoint and say, wow, here's the answer. Gone are the days that I think you expect your first line workers to know everything.
Absolutely.
And by having this powerful tool, and then the customer walks away and says, wow, that was a great experience. She can say on Yammer, I had a customer that said she had a great experience. So I think it's that feeling of belonging, of being part of it, but involving the customer as well. Because customers today demand different kind of experiences. And if the person involves them by using Yammer, by using in front of them, I think it's more powerful.
Yeah. And using that same example, this is where Yammer is great, particularly where you've got that diverse workforce, is that if you didn't have the answer, then using Yammer to find the answer and reaching out to your community to say, hey, I had this customer question come up, I couldn't find the answer on SharePoint, what do others think? And it's a great way to then generate ideas and not feel isolated about having to solve it for yourself.
And you could have the customer at the counter, or you could say, look, I'm going to share it with my community and I'll get back to you. So yes. I think it's that real customer experience that this person cares. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah, great.
So to me, if we want to succeed in the cosmetic industry and be the global prestige house of beauty, we are going to have to do a lot more in the digital transformation of our first line workforce. And we believe that the Microsoft 365 is one way for us. We're experimenting, we're learning, and I'm sure there's going to be some roadblocks, but it's exciting.
Well, thank you. And the experiment, Mick, keep it up. There's no harm in giving things a try and exploring. The systems are robust. Nothing's going to break. And so I think just getting people on it, back to the adoption piece, and having a play and not being scared by it is a great way.
And my mantra is, if it's safe, give it a try.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.